Hi, this is Ann with the Learn and Grow Educational Series, and I'm here in our virtual Sustainability Learning Center in Test Garden to bring you another video from our Food for Thought series. And this is another presentation that has been taken from our online classes that I do live via Zoom on Meetup. So I'll have links for all of that down below if you want to see our live classes. This is really just as much for the benefit of those folks who want to go to our live classes but are not available when they're held, so that they can still get the content at their convenience. And so hi to you guys, because this content is a lot of, this is you're a big reason why I'm doing this, but also for the benefit of those who just want to get the information at their own convenience and not have to go through the whole Meetup Zoom thing and just want, want some instant gratification. You want the information now. So regardless of why you're here, thank you so much for being here for this video. And let me just get right into it. So you may have already seen some of our prior content, or maybe you're new to us. So for those of you who are new, let me go ahead and give you a brief introduction about me. Again, my name is Ann Zachary. I'm the creator of the Learn and Grow Educational Series, and I actually created it in 2013 when I went back to get my master's degree in my 40s in educational psychology. And so all of the instruction that I do through the Learn and Grow Educational Series, whether it's online or in person, is all done according to evidence-based practices and research-driven methodologies and data-driven approaches to teaching. But in that vein, I'm not going to teach content that isn't also evidence-based. And so the content is based on what has been documented and proven by science, and where we can find reliable data to back up what we're doing. Studies that have been replicated and have produced consistent results, regardless of who's doing the research, those kinds of things. And then also, we're looking at how we can impact our communities at large around the world. And at this point, we have about 56,000 learners around the world following us on Facebook. We've got about 3,300 accounts on Instagram following us, a lot of which are institutional accounts that each represent thousands of people, as opposed to just one individual user. And we're starting to grow our audience on TikTok and on YouTube as well. And so we're trying to reach our audiences by whatever means is the most approachable to them. And so we're using the psychology of social media marketing to push instruction rather than sales per se. Now, in the spirit of full disclosure, I will say we do have an online store that's really just a virtual storefront for Amazon, where we are affiliates. And so we're not doing any order fulfillment or processing payments. All of that's handled by Amazon at our online store. And again, links, I'll have all that below. But we get, I think it's something like 3% of each transaction that is run through using our particular affiliate code attached to it. Again, links for all of that will be below. So that gives you if you're new to us, it gives you sort of a sense of where this content is coming from and why it's being provided to you. This is part of our free nonprofit instruction to push this content out online. So this video's topic is about starting seeds, and starting seeds is really not that mysterious, and I think people get intimidated by it for lack of understanding what it's all really about, which isn't that much. But people get intimidated by what they don't know. It's the fear of the unknown. It's like, oh, is this going to be too hard? And so we become trepidatious. We become intimidated by the fear of what it might be. And then once we actually understand how simple it really is, and that we were making a mountain out of a molehill, then we feel kind of silly. I mean, that's it? That was all there was to it? You're like, I would have done this sooner if I had only known. And so I had a conversation with someone in India a few years ago, and who was in a very low income, impoverished part of his local area, and said that his neighbors in his family were all struggling, and slum conditions. And he said that everybody's here, the mindset is, if food was that easy to grow, everybody would already be doing it. And it's an assumption being made on the fact that nobody knows how to grow their own food. So they're just assuming it must be too hard. If it was easy, we'd all know. Well, there was a time when we did all know. So, um, as with everything else, as soon as growing food became commercialized, that knowledge became removed from the general population, and what used to be a convenience of buying food that had already been grown so that you didn't have to grow it yourself became the only way people could survive. And so people became survival dependent upon what had started out being only a convenience. And they lost the knowledge of how to be self-sufficient. And so this is a part of our instruction. We don't want that knowledge to be lost. People need to know how to take care of themselves, come what may. And, and we don't need corporations having control over our survival. And so, being food independent is just as much about democracy and freedom as it is about, just making sure you got all your bases covered in case something goes down and you can't get food from the store for whatever reasons. So this instruction here is just about starting seeds, and it doesn't matter what kind of gardening you're doing. Now, we do self-watering container gardening, and we have other content about all of that. This is something that can be generalized to any type of gardening. So whether you're doing it in containers, you're doing it in raised beds, you're just plowing rows in the yard and planting directly into the ground, whatever way you're doing, starting seeds is the same no matter what. And so some things you're going to want to seed directly in the ground, so you're not going to need to start them separately and then transplant them. So for things like carrots and any kind of root vegetable, you kind of just want to go ahead and plant it where you want it to grow. And some things you can go either way, like beans or corn or, things like that. You can start them separately indoors, especially if it's too cold at the time that you start your seeds. But by the time they get big enough to transplant, it will be warm outside. And so you're maximizing the warm period of the year to get as much growing time in as you possibly can. And in that case, you are going to want to start your stuff indoors and then transplant it. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. But a lot of things you just would directly seed into your soil, and it would just sprout from where you planted. So that's less trauma for the plants. If it's possible to plant that way, or if that's what your plants require because they're too fragile for transplantation, then you would want to directly seed into wherever you're going to grow. However, if you need to start seeds separately and then transplant them, then I've got a few tricks to show you that'll be really helpful. So one of the first things I want to show you is seedling starter pellets, and I have the same kind of pellets you see in the image there in that little colorful bag. If you look right here, I have these right here. Now the little colorful bag got mangled, and so now I'm keeping it in a Ziploc bag. Basically, it looks like a tray of cookies. I mean, you can like, oh, num, but that's not what this is. This is like a little mesh sack, a fabric sack. And I don't know how biodegradable it necessarily is, but it's durable enough to hold everything together. And then as the roots grow, it's fragile enough that the roots can actually tear holes in it. And so it adds some structural stability to the root ball so that it's not having to work so hard to support itself, and can work on getting bigger. And then once it's well established, your roots are going to be sticking all out of this thing but not in this form. Because what you do is, and this is brilliant with respect to conservation, water conservation, is you stick this in a cup of water and it absorbs the water. And once it's absorbed the water, I have an example right here, it turns into this. And it becomes this big swollen sack of growing medium, which is like basically compressed potting soil that's been completely dried out and flattened out to make that little disc that looks like a cookie that you're seeing right here. And what's brilliant about this, at least for, when you're talking about conservation, is that, and I'll explain why I got this in this cup right here in just a second. But when you're talking about conservation and sustainability, if you have to buy something from the store, you have to appreciate how much fossil fuels have gone into not just producing it, but transporting it. And the any kind of pollution that's created across any of the course of its construction and its fulfillment to the store where you buy it, or if you're buying it online, into your mailbox. When you're talking about carbon footprint of shipped goods, anything that needs to be moist in order to be used, but has moisture in it when it travels to the store or to your mailbox, you're shipping water weight. That increases the demand being placed on the vehicle that's moving it. It requires more fuel to move more weight. And so you have all of these factors that play into increasing the carbon footprint of that particular product. But when you're talking about something like this, now, not that the carbon footprint has been eliminated by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it's sitting here in a plastic tray that's clearly made from a petroleum product. But this itself does not have water weight because it's been completely dried out and compressed into this disc so that you add water once you get it. And so these are not heavy. This is not a heavy tray. I mean, it's got a little bit of weight to it because there's so many of them in there. But each one of these things is just light as a feather. Oops. Each one of these things is light as a feather. And so, you know, there's almost no weight to an individual disc. And so when you're talking about carbon footprint, if you're going to have to buy something to start your seeds, then, and that's, you know, you got to go out and get stuff, then this is definitely something to think about in terms of being more water conservative and having a smaller carbon footprint than perhaps some of the other products out there. So I like these guys. Not only that, they're easy to store until I need them. I mean, I still keep them in the plastic tray they came in, but then I've got this Ziploc bag that I put them in so that they don't, you know, go flying everywhere, because I've made the mistake of not doing that. And they will go flying everywhere. And so, you know, I try to keep them bagged up so that they're all contained and everything. And plus, I don't want them to get wet because, you know, God forbid they get wet in storage and then they all poof up, and then, so that would be gross. So that's one way of doing your seeds, and that's, yeah, lots of people do it that way. Another way that I figured out is if you're gonna, you know, and there's a backstory to all of this, so let me give you the backstory so you get the concept of why I would even have these in the first place if I'm teaching sustainability, because the plastic waste in the landfill of these things is like reprehensible. So a few years ago, the Learning Center was not at its current location. I was working with different people and had it on a different property in a different part of California, up in the mountains just north of Los Angeles, up where they have, you know, skiing. Within an hour of LA, you can go skiing up in the Angeles National Forest. And so I was right at the snow line between where, on the north facing side of those mountains, you know, facing away from LA towards the desert. So we were right on that snow line between where the Mojave Desert turns into alpine forest. And so you had this band of this highly unique ecosystem and microclimate where we had Joshua trees in alpine forest blending in with each other, and we had pinyon pines everywhere dropping all of these amazing pine cones full of pine nuts, and the foraging opportunities were insane. It was just such a unique ecosystem. And so I was up there, and the property owners had a house on the property that they were tricking out to rent out on Airbnb, and the whole goal was to have the Learn and Grow instruction being offered in tandem with the housing options on the property that were being built and constructed and whatnot. And we were going to be adding sustainably built structures as well as rehabbing this house as sustainably as possible, and increasing its energy efficiency was like a huge priority because it was just a box in the middle of the desert. And so so they were working on all of that, and eventually got to the point where they did have Airbnb guests coming and staying in it, just as regular Airbnb. We hadn't launched the instruction piece of it because that part still hadn't been built out. And so, but we had little bits and pieces, and I was doing everything virtually and online at that point, no in-person stuff. And so the guests in the house, the owners of the property just went, oh yeah, let's make it as convenient and hotel-like as we can for them. And so they put in a Keurig machine in the kitchen, but then it produced all these pods. I'm like, guys, Sustainability Learning Center, how am I supposed to teach sustainability with any kind of credibility if you guys are having, you know, you're practically single-handedly responsible for climate change with this stuff? And so what we decided to do was to put out a little basket in the kitchen area next to the Keurig pod with a little sign that says, please don't throw your Keurig pods away. Please put them in this basket. We repurpose them for starting seeds for the Learn and Grow garden. And because I had experimented and figured out that I could. So let me show you what this is all about. So whenever you use one of these pods, the machine's going to poke a hole in the dead center and a hole on the underside of it. And what's going to happen is water's going to get injected into here. And then the coffee is going to brew inside the little cup and then trickle out the bottom and into your coffee cup. And then this is like, you know, single cup's worth of coffee in here. Well, what's also in here is a little paper coffee filter that's completely biodegradable, and it's like that brown or, you know, organic non-bleached coffee filters you can get at the grocery store. That's what's in here. Because quite honestly, bleaching everything white costs more money. Very often, and so it's just more cost effective to use the unbleached ones, but also it's not full of bleach and chemicals and nasty stuff you don't want to be drinking anyway. So you've got I haven't yet run into one that was bleached, regardless of brand that I've done this with. And so this foil bit on the top you don't need though. So what you do, so you peel off the foil, and what you'll notice, and I hope the lighting is adequate here so you can see it, but there's like a hole down the center where the coffee grounds got compacted against the sides of the cup, but there's a hole down the center because all that hot water that was injected into the pod to make the cup of coffee, you have to have enough room in there for the water to sit and brew before it starts running out. You can't have this thing completely filled with coffee, or there's not going to be enough room for the water. And you have to have the water stay in there long enough to take on the particulate matter of the coffee grounds and leach that part of it out to make the coffee that's going to go down into the cup. And while more water starts coming through, because obviously this isn't going to hold an entire cup worth of coffee, or an entire cup worth of water. So it's got to hold a certain amount of it all at once and give it enough time to collect enough coffee stuff to turn into coffee and drip out. And so it's going to sit in there, and it's going to create this hole down the center where that water is being shot into it and accumulating, and all the grounds get packed against the walls of the interior of the cup. Well, this is perfect because then you can come over here to your bag of soil and take a little bit of soil, and then you get your seeds. And this is a photo album, or else a 3-ring binder, but these are photo album inserts that are normally used for like hard, copy photos, printed photos from like having film developed. So what kind of seed do we want to plant in here? What's something good to plant? These are bush beans. So a bush bean is great for something like this. So if I set that there, top of the egg box. Okay, so now I've got a little pinch of dirt in there, because you don't want just pure coffee grounds. That's loads of nitrogen. It's very good as a fertilizer that way, but it's to supplement soil, not to replace it. So then you moosh it around, and so now I've got the seed buried in there with a mixture of coffee grounds and potting soil. And I'm going to put another pinch of potting soil on top of it. And now all I need to do is put it in something that's very similar to this, where it's going to create a greenhouse effect where you've got ventilation through this little hole. This is how I recycle my Starbucks cups. And then you've got, it gets hot enough in there because of the greenhouse effect of the sunlight coming into the plastic but not leaving as easily. So it will get warm in there in the sunlight, and the moisture that's already in the pod. And of course I mist it with water every now and again just to make sure it stays damp until the seed gets really established and I transplant it. But this will allow condensation to form on the inside of the cup and keep a lot of that moisture in, but it's not going to cook, and it does need some air exchange. So we do have the little sippy hole up there is perfect for that. So I'm going to have to create another little situation like that. So long as you have some kind of way of trapping that sunlight in so that it stays warm and keeping the condensation in, but still having enough air circulation in there that it's not going to suffocate, because there is an exchange of gases that has to happen, and the plants need their own kind of gases from the air as well. They create oxygen. They need to be able to bring in new carbon dioxide and be able to process that, and they can't do that if there's not a constant flow of air available to them in the cup. So here you can see, like in this instance, it's just a used styrofoam coffee cup with, I think it was one of these pellets that I had started, and then I just stuck it inside a sandwich bag from the grocery store, and I clipped, I don't know if you can really see it here, but I clipped little tiny holes in it so there was some air circulation, but I still largely wanted to be able to keep, the moisture in. And so you want air circulation enough, for air to move around in there, but you don't want to have so much of an opening that everything dries out. You want to be able to trap moisture in there as well. And but you can use pretty much anything like this. These are like little biodegradable peat moss or something, I think is what they make the cups out of. But it's like cardboard, but it breaks down, and then potting soil, so you don't even have to like remove the plant from the container to plant it. Where here, these are done in like solo cups, and the solo cups obviously are not biodegradable. So when it came time to transplant these guys, I had to dump them over, and pour them out into my hand very gently before putting them into the self-watering containers, where they ended up finishing out their little lifespans and producing. These were cucumbers, I believe. So you can use, anything you have around the house that will accomplish the same ends. I mean, you can be creative and MacGyver whatever kind of a solution works for you with what you have on hand. What you just basically have to make sure you accomplish is that you've got some place where you can hold the moisture in, but there's adequate drainage of the soil or whatever the growing medium is that your seeds are started in whatever method you're using. So you need adequate drainage, but they need to be able to retain enough moisture to keep the seed adequately damp. You don't want it drying out. So you gotta, your growing medium matters with respect to that, which is another reason why I like these pellets. But with using like the Keurig pods, because it's inside of a plastic container, it will retain moisture a lot easier as well. And so then once you have whatever type of medium and growing container you're going to use to start your seeds figured out, then it's all about, okay, well, how do I enclose it and give it that greenhouse experience so it stays warm and adequately moist, but there's still adequate air circulation. And whether that's a plastic bag over a cup, or like I'm doing here with repurposing the Starbucks cup and just using the fact that it already came with a hole at the top of it, and I don't have to worry about it that much, and it gets the job done for me. If you can repurpose what you already have, then that keeps plastic out of landfills that much longer as well. That's basically, what I wanted to share with you with respect to different ways to start seeds. You don't have to use any of these methods that I've shown you exactly. What I want you to get out of it is, what are all the things that all of these methods have in common? What do they make happen? And if you can make the same things happen using different materials, but to the same ends, then it's goal accomplished. I want you to understand the underlying principles of why these methods work, so that if you don't have these exact materials on hand and you have to figure out your own way of making it happen with what you've already got, then you understand the criteria that have to be satisfied. You're going to have a growing medium that holds on to enough moisture but doesn't get super soggy and has adequate drainage. You're going to have some kind of container that allows the moisture to stay trapped, but that there's still adequate air circulation without allowing for too much evaporation. And you want to keep it adequately warm, because it's little babies. Seeds are little babies. They need that warmth. And so they're going to need a warmer environment to start out in, to basically incubate when you're getting them started. And so that's why you want that greenhouse effect, where it gets warm inside whatever is you've done, and it's trapping that moisture in there so it stays warm and moist but not saturated. And so if you can satisfy those criteria with whatever materials you're going to use, your seeds are going to sprout. And you have to bear in mind, seeds want to sprout. They're made to want to sprout. They come prepackaged with all the nutrients and everything. They just need water, warmth, and sunlight to get themselves going, and growing medium with nutrients around them. And so as long as you can give them a nurturing environment, they will do all the hard work. They're going to do all the heavy lifting. You just have to create the circumstances for them to be able to function that way, and they will on their own. So it's, once you understand that it's not that hard to create what they need and that they're going to be doing all the work, then it's your job is super easy compared to what they have to do. And so so I hope that that helps you wrap your brain around it conceptually, and gives you a broader perspective of what it is you're really trying to make happen here. If you understand what you're trying to make happen, how you make it happen will come about. You'll sort it because you understand what you're trying to accomplish and what you're going to have to create to make that happen, even if you're not using exactly the same tools as I did. So I just don't want you to get hung up on thinking that these are the only things you can do. These are examples that give you a sense of what any kind of seed starting situation is going to require. So if you have any questions or comments about any of this, certainly post comments down below. Please like and subscribe, and if you want to follow us and participate in our online live events on meetups via Zoom, then I will make sure you've got the links for that below. I'll make sure you got links to our website where we've got all kinds of free online instruction in various different formats. We've got K through 12 lesson plans tied to the Common Core and STEM. We've got content that ties our self-watering container gardening methodology to every Boy Scout badge to which it might possibly apply. And we've got lots of family and community-based projects. If you're involved with Kiwanis International and you want to learn more about how Learn and Grow is partnering with our local Kiwanis Club here in Camarillo, then I'm certainly happy to share our program design with you as well as with any other community organizations. We're not limiting that to Kiwanis. It's just because I'm a Kiwanian, that's where I've been able to make it happen the soonest. And so, but if anybody else, Lions Club, Rotary, whatever, is interested in doing similar projects, then by all means contact me. If you're a school group, by all means, DM or post a comment, or and make sure, or you can go to our website and contact us through our email or on our contact us page, and certainly we can get back to you that way if you're looking for more information about how we can help use what we teach to educate your learners in the places where you're doing your work. So shout out to all of our educators out there trying to deal with all of this ever-changing world and all the challenges that come with it, and all the new things that our kids are having to face that we've never had to teach to before. So in which we probably should have been teaching to before, but we're not, and now we're starting to. And so to the degree that we can support you with this kind of content, please by all means consider us a resource. So thanks again for watching this video, and we look forward to seeing you in our next one. You guys take care.